Today I want to talk about The Bluest Eye by Toni Morrison. Toni Morrison is an author that I read in college, beloved, and I wasn't that big a fan of it. To be honest, I don't really remember much except for the baby and, you know, the surprise, the twist, or just the secret of it. I won't give it away. Toni Morrison's an incredible author. She's an incredible writer, very skilled. I don't really care for her style, however. Like in this book, I love the dialogue. The dialogue is awesome. Just some of the back and forth and the way that it reads is fantastic. It sounds like little kids talking to each other, just the snippy back and forth stuff. I like the dialogue a lot. However, when it gets into the narration, there are parts where you'll be following a couple people in the scene, and then all of a sudden the narration, you're talking about something that took place years ago in a different town, and how did we get here? You're not really sure what's going on. It's hard to follow in a lot of places. It can tend to be poetic and lyrical in places, which is just not my cup of tea. Doesn't mean it's bad writing, doesn't mean it's a bad book at all, but it's just not my favorite style. The content, let's talk about the content. If you are someone who struggles with graphic and disturbing and just tough to read things, this isn't the book for you. It follows the course of three main girls who are like 9 to 11. However, the content is extremely adult. The book follows three little black girls in 1940s Ohio. So they're dealing with all kinds of things. They're dealing with growing up, the first menstruation. They're dealing with gross racism. But then there's humiliation and torture, and there is molestation, and there's rape, and there's incest, and just lots of very heavy topics and heavy themes throughout the book. And so as far as just the feel of the book, obviously the whole point is the struggle with racism, the struggle with being black in America in the 1940s, which obviously these days there's still major issues going on. But it shows just what it's like. This is a poor black family, and so their struggle with just trying to get by, just trying to stay out of the way sort of things. And then you've also got the issues with the poorer black families looking at richer black families who they see as they're basically joining the white system. They're not really with us collective as the black people of America. They're kind of embracing they're riding on the coattails of the white people, and therefore they're not really with us. They're not unified with us. So there's even just that type of segregation within the segregation. So I talked about the narration and how the narration was tough to follow. The storyline is even a completely different matter. I have kind of taken it upon myself not to read summaries or blurbs, whether it's movies or books or just even TV show episodes, because I feel like they give so much away so much of the time, just about the plot and twists, but also they kind of tell you how you're supposed to be feeling about things. Are you supposed to be happy, sad? Is this a struggle? Like it kind of gives away so much of just what's in the book, and so I've kind of stopped reading. I've seen, okay, it's about this, and then I've stopped reading. This book is one of those situations where the blurb, to me, has nothing to do with the actual book. It's very interesting. The book starts out from the perspective of Claudia, and it's first person perspective of this little girl named Claudia, her older sister named Frida, and just their kind of day-to-day living in this poor household. Just the things they do to get by, the teasing, the going to school, it just follows their day-to-day stuff. Then comes this little girl named Piccola, who I think she's like 11 or 12, and she's joining them from another family. Her parents, there's rumors about her parents. Her mom can't keep hold of her, the dad's run out, and so this family takes her in. And so Piccola joins the little sisters, and they kind of take her in and take her under their wing, and they let her be a part of the family. So in my mind, and I don't know the exact percentage of this, but the whole perspective from the very beginning is from Claudia. Claudia, the little girl whose sister is Frida, and then Piccola is the outsider that's coming in, and so it's her perspective on Piccola, it's her perspective of life. She receives this baby doll that is a blonde-haired, blue-eyed baby doll, and they say, oh, isn't she so beautiful? And this is obviously something that the adults think that she would like, that she would think was beautiful, and she's disgusted by it because she sees, okay, if this is beautiful, that means by default I must be not beautiful. And so she says she hates it. She wants to pluck its eyes out, rip its head off. And you can just see the frustration in Claudia of, here's all the standards and expectations from the society that she's living in, and she doesn't see herself fitting within that mold. And so it's not that she feels sad or wants to be a part of that, she wants nothing to be a part of that. But then things get crazy because all of a sudden the narration and the perspective shifts to Piccola's story, and it kind of goes back in time and tells about how Piccola ended up with Claudia and Frida's family. It talks about the fact that her dad was basically scum, but it goes back into his story and about how he was abused and the hurt that he went through, but then he ends up raping his daughter Piccola, and so she becomes pregnant, and that's how the family breaks apart. The mother obviously hates the dad, and Piccola goes to live with Claudia and Frida. But the rest of the story then all of a sudden shifts into Piccola's story, her mom's story, her dad's story, the family, just everything around that. And it was very abrupt and kind of came out of nowhere. I guess that'd be abrupt, but it didn't make any sense to me. And like I said, I had not read the blurb, so I didn't know to expect this. I didn't know that this actually is what the blurb says the whole book is about Piccola. So this is how the book is described in the blurb. Piccola Breedlove, a young black girl, prays every day for beauty. Mocked by other children for the dark skin, curly hair, and brown eyes that set her apart, she yearns for normalcy, for the blonde hair and blue eyes that she believes will allow her to finally fit in. Yet as her dream grows more fervent, her life slowly starts to disintegrate in the face of adversity and strife. A powerful examination of our obsession with beauty and conformity, blah, 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 blah. The whole first half of the book is about Claudia, from Claudia's perspective, Claudia and Frida. Piccola is kind of an aside. She's someone who joins the story. And yet the blurb says this is what the whole book's about. So it's very, very confusing. It also talks about how she prays for blue eyes every single night for beauty. You don't see that. You see Piccola, there's this weird sub-story, but it's at the very end, probably the last 30 pages, 20 pages, whatever. Talks about this miracle man, this prophetic guy who's this pedophile, gross dude, and it says that like he does miracles. He cons people. Well, Piccola thinks she needs blue eyes. She wants blue eyes. But again, this has not been something that's been throughout the entire novel. Like, this is at the very end. And so she goes to this guy and says, ask God to give me blue eyes. And he says, well, I can't promise anything. This is a tough request. But then she ends up getting blue eyes. So again, a very strange, there's nothing else in the book that's magical or, the magical realism. There's nothing else like that. And yet she receives the blue eyes. And then once she receives the blue eyes, there's this really great exchange with her and Claudia where she says, do you think my blue eyes are pretty? And Claudia says, yes. And she says, are they the prettiest eyes? And Claudia says, yes. And she says, do you think they're the bluest eyes? And she says, yes. And then she says, are her eyes bluer than mine? As another girl passes by. And Claudia says, what's going on here? And she says, what about him? Does he have bluer eyes than mine? And so it gets into this whole idea of be careful what you wish for. Kind of the Twilight Zone, you got what you asked for, and now here's the consequences, and you can see how this obsession starts to take over Piccola. And this would have been a very fascinating thing to look at for a lot of the book and the story, to see where the consequences go and that kind of thing. But in this book, This is at the very end of the story. This is the very end of the book. She gets the blue eyes, and so she's this black girl with blue eyes, and what does that mean? And what does beauty mean? And now she's obsessed with being the most beautiful, having the prettiest eyes. And so Claudia says, you know what? I'm done with this. I don't want to do this. If this is how you're going to be now that you have the blue eyes, I don't want to be a part of this. And it's obviously powerful. It's obviously heartbreaking to read this, but again, it's so confusing within the confines of the story and how it's told and how it's taking place, and it kind of comes out of nowhere. What's really interesting though is Toni Morrison in her afterward says she was trying some different ways to tell the story, and when she looks back on it, she doesn't think she really did it well, that she doesn't think she succeeded, and she wishes she had done it another way, which is interesting to see from the author, and obviously someone of her caliber and her skill set, to see her talk like that, because I do think it is bizarre, and it takes away from the actual content of the story with the way that it's framed, structured, and set up. So check it out. Again, this is just my take on it. This is my opinion, but I found it hard to read, hard to follow, and I thought it could have been done differently and probably been a little bit more successful. As always, my name is Mark Taylor. Until next time, keep reading and know that you're more valuable than you could possibly imagine.